Hi, my name is Caleb Loving. For my practicum, I worked with the Clovis Unified School District Special Education Program as a substitute instructional assistant level 2. What that means is that I jump from site to site, school district to school district, helping out and whoever was missing that day. If there's a vacancy, I had a selection I could choose from. But every day I worked with a new site, new students. It was very interesting overall. And it was interesting getting to see such a wide variety of students and working with kids on the autism spectrum, especially. And there was a very wide range. I worked with students ranging from preschool all the way to high school. And so it was interesting being able to experience the variety. CUSD, Clovis Unified School District, has two different programs in the special education department. There is the Resource Specialist Program, the RSP program, and that is for children ranging from mild to moderate on the spectrum. It's usually kids who just need a little bit more help in school, just nothing too severe, but it's just a lesser intense program. At the elementary level, it usually involves, on my end, sitting with the kid in class. They do most of the work by themselves. Sometimes they have special work that is different from the rest of the kids. But I am just there with them in the general education classroom, helping them if they ever need it, never giving them the answer, just kind of guiding them along. Then there is the specialized day program, which is they call it the SDC program, and that is for kids ranging from the moderate to severe on the autism spectrum. Now, these programs, the children aren't in general education classrooms like they are in the RSP program. They are all together in one room, and each student has a designated curriculum assigned to them. And so this ranges depending on what level the student is at, what grade they're in, how far they are on the spectrum. It's a very wide variety, and so each kid comes from a very different background and just has a different program altogether. For example, in the younger RSP or younger SDC program, so this is all the kids in the room, I worked with one of the kids who his curriculum was for us to be able to tell them line down, and so that is when they have to draw a line going down, and so they had to respond to verbal command, verbal instruction rather, and be able to understand what it is and have the hand-eye coordination to be able to move a pencil up and down a page. There's also line across. Now, also in the same preschool program, we had a student who would sometimes be in our preschool program and then sometimes go in the general education preschool program. And so they were somewhere on the spectrum where they could go into both. We wanted to advance them into general education as much as possible, but they were at a spot where they do also need to be in our specialized daycare program. And so that's why we still had them for some of the day in the SDC program. And that is just an example of what kind of range there was with the kids. And it was very interesting being able to see them work in that way. Another very interesting curriculum that I got a chance to work with on a certain student in the SDC program was we had to practice conversations. And so the student excelled in mathematics, science, and he was in elementary school, I think around 5th grade or so. But what he severely had trouble with was social language. And so I had got to practice conversations with him, and it usually consisted of anything. He got to start however he wanted to, and usually started with him saying, "My favorite food is spaghetti," what's your favorite food? And then I would answer, and I'd ask him another question. And it was very interesting being able to see the back and forth dialogue, that something I'm very used to, and I think comes natural to a lot of kids, but they had to break it down to a formula for this student to learn how to effectively communicate as most other people do. And it was very interesting because it was a very rhythmic formula. It was, he said what his favorite thing was and asked me how I'm doing, what my favorite thing was. I would comment, interesting. And then I would answer the question, and then he would comment to my answer saying, interesting, or cool. Some sort of comment to signify that he listened. And this breaking down of the conversation really benefited for the curriculum, and it was able to monitoring the process and how far along he got in the program. Overall, I think communication was something that I really took away from this practicum experience, because a lot of the kids had trouble communicating. That past student just so happened to be advanced enough that he could really work on practicing conversations, but a lot of students couldn't even verbally express themselves or use their words. And so there was a variety of ways to overcome that each program managed to create. So a lot of the programs use charts, and each chart would have a picture on it, and the student would point to the picture, and then that would indicate to us what they wanted. Sometimes they were even able to put together a whole sentence. So there was a picture for I, picture for want, and picture for chips. And they go point, point, point. I want chips. And it was very interesting to see how, even though they cannot verbally express this, they can still communicate with us by pointing to these pictures. Each program had a slightly different variation, but it all narrowed down essentially to the pictures, and the students could still communicate with us in a very different way, though. I think that's something that occurred throughout the entire experience of the practicum, is that students were always communicating somehow. And whether it was something I clearly understood, like they would point to their sandwich telling me I'm hungry, I was like, oh, I get it, and so I'd give them their sandwich. Or something that was a little more complicated, like a student would walk up to me with 2 train toys and just hand them to me. I didn't quite know what he wanted, and so I thought he was giving them to me. That's not what it was. He wanted me to put them together as trains do. But I didn't understand that because I hadn't been in the program, and each time a student is different and usually wants something different. But nevertheless, each student was trying to communicate something non-verbally. They knew what they wanted to say. And each time I got to be around the same site more and more, I got to understand the students' communications methods, cues, facial expressions. They're always talking to us, but it's not always verbally. And I thought that was very fascinating to learn about, especially jumping from all the sites. Each student was vastly different. I remember one of my favorite stories is I was at this one site, and there was a preschool program, and they had the matching shapes game. And the person was excelling at it. They would match triangle to triangle, square to square, and it was great for them. But I wanted to see what would happen if I matched the triangle to the circle, something clearly wrong, and seeing if they could correct it, because that was one of the other themes of all the programs, was self-correction. That was a very high goal that was set for all the students. Overall, we wanted the students to self-correct if they made a mistake. We were less worried about the mistake, more concerned about correcting themselves. And whether we had to prompt them verbally saying, is that what you mean to do? Or we had to demonstrate to them with our physical actions. But the highest goal was self-correction with no verbal or physical prompts. And so I moved the triangle to the circle, and the student looked at it very intensely for a few seconds, and then he looked at me, and looked back at the board, and looked at me, and I could tell from his expression he was just saying to me, you an idiot or something? That's the triangle. This triangle goes to the triangle, not in the circle. And so he picks it up and puts it back in the triangle. It was a very momentous occasion. He was very proud of himself for figuring it out. And that was just a very fun thing to watch him self-correct. And overall, that was always a rewarding experience, watching these students being able to achieve such a thing. And I was very happy to be able to work with that. And so overall, that was a practicum experience. What I did, sort of the things I learned from them, and what I had to set up for them. And I think it was a very fun and rewarding experience.